In today's episode, we're sitting down with Chris Cano. He's a former nuclear engineer in the Navy turned powerhouse in the mortgage world, and he walks us through his house hacking as an E3 in Hawaii, all the way through building his multi-million-dollar mortgage and real estate empire. Chris shares not only his hard lessons learned in real estate investing, but also his unshakable belief in serving veterans with integrity, education, and heart. This one's equal part tactical, personal, and wildly inspiring. Let's dive in.
Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military. Hey, Chris.
Yo,
Hey, how you doing?
what's up, Griffin and Jack?
Looking good, man.
Oh, you guys look great. Y'all look,
Professional.
Griffin, you're not in Hawaii, are you?
I'm not. No, I'm on the Hawaii of the East Coast, what some know as Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say you do not look as happy as Jack. That makes sense. Jack is living the life.
I'm just lacking that natural glow.
Yeah.
From the sunburn from golf yesterday.
Where'd you golf at?
Huakale.
Huakale. Did you?
Yeah.
So you know where my is it? Yeah, you play in my backyard then, right there.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
Jack's backyard.
Yeah. Oh, you're on that same street, huh?
Yeah, we're, I think, 3 doors down from your house. Yeah.
And so when I bought that house, it was hole 8, but somebody told me they've changed it now.
It is. Yeah. So it's hole 7. It's the end of hole 7 now, and 8 starts. Yeah. Because before that, like the clubhouse wasn't built or anything. Now
Yeah.
the hole number 1 starts at the clubhouse, which you'd be able to see from the backyard and everything. It's beautiful.
What hole is the one that has like the impossible par 3? Like you got to land it on an island, kind of.
Yeah. I think that's 12 or maybe 11. Yeah. I think it's 12 actually. Yeah.
No matter how good of a time I was having on that golf course, that hole ruined my day.
Right.
Yeah, hated
Yeah.
it.
We had the member tournament and we started on that hole. And I was like,
God.
oh, great. Thanks. I get
Yeah.
to start on my hardest hole. Just like
Yeah.
a par 3
'Cause it's
over the
like-
water.
Yeah, I think it's like 200 yards or something, dude. And if like I can't hit my 5-iron that far, and I'm horrible with my woods, so I was just like, just throw it, man. Just throw
Oh,
the golf ball.
Exactly.
Do home values fluctuate based off how likely they are to have a ball in the back window?
Not quite. I feel like they should, because that is definitely a thing. You can't lease solar panels on certain golf courses because of the likelihood of them getting damaged by golf balls. You can buy them and take on the liability yourself, but leasing them is a more difficult on golf courses. But our houses are like perfectly situated where we don't get balls. We're far enough beyond the green where you'd have to be really horrible. I suppose it's possible. And then we're short of the next tee box. So it kind of works out. We don't get any golf balls.
You guys should have maximum value. That perfect zone.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the value is in getting the golf balls because then you never have to buy balls.
Yeah.
Right?
Does the price of the balls outweigh the price of the broken window?
Right.
Depends if you're hitting Pro V1s, it probably does. But yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, in this neighborhood, like the homes are flying. We have a friend, the one that called you about that was trying to possibly interested in renting your place. They're even struggling to find a place that's on the golf course because it's just, I mean, PCS season, it's summer, it's great timing for you to get some vacancy right in July, or that's when you want to fill it because vacancies go, I mean, it's almost zero, right? It's just crazy. All the people move in the military. I'm assuming, Canadian military, probably the same way. So hopefully they'll be here for a long time. That'll be great.
Griffin, did you catch that? Did you hear Jack say that some people are struggling getting a home on the golf course? And so I hope in your podcast we talk about struggle because while LA is burning down right now, Jack's having to struggle with some of his tenants not finding a home on the golf course. And there's such a different world people live in Hawaii, man.
Some people have even had to settle for hole 12. Can you believe that?
We should check on them.
I mean,
I
check in on them.
Yeah, good.
I'm here to support them.
Hole 12 support group. Started up.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Do that
Griffin, you
together,
served
we
as
never
well?
did.
Yeah, he was my XO when I was a commander in an airborne unit in the Army. Yeah.
Okay.
So we knew each other from then. Griffin's one of the most, I don't know, he's an incredible leader, one of the most impactful people in my life. And we started this podcast just because we both transitioned from service around the same time. And I think the time that the transition left us wanting for a little bit more from the support side of the military. Frankly, we're both doing okay, of course, like you land on your feet, but not everybody does, right? So we wanted to make this podcast interviewing people who have successfully transitioned. One, as kind of a beacon for people to, hey, maybe I can take away even a tidbit of information, but also just to give people, I guess one side is like the, hey, you can do this, right? Like almost the raw, like support that side of things, but also the actual tangible ideas. I mean, we've interviewed across the whole spectrum, just tons of different industries that people might not know about for transitioning service members who like, hey, this might be an absolute viable path for you that you've never even heard of, like a restoration company or something like that. So it's been really great. We've been doing this for about a year now. Griffin, how many episodes do we have? I think we just crossed it's like 40 something.
Next week will be 44
Wow.
published.
44, yeah.
Okay.
So it's been we're consistently posting once a week, and it's been really rewarding for Griffin and I. Don't want to speak for you, but it's been phenomenal for me just to have these conversations. We have a good idea of what our path forward is, but it's been incredible to hear just the different learning thing, what people have taken away from their own transition. It's been very helpful for us, and I hope it's helpful for other people too.
That's awesome. When I was getting into the roots of our podcast about a year and a half ago, I wanted to interview entrepreneurs and CEOs and business owners. And for context for the show, I would ask their assistant to schedule a half-day carve out, and I would follow them for half a day. And kind of just whether it was watching them in a staff meeting or just how they would interact, I'd hang out for about 3-4 hours, talk to some of their staff, talk to some of their like operations department heads kind of guys. And then I'd bring them on the show. And I think I got more value, like just watching how they were leading, hearing them talk to their staff, hearing what their ops manager, their financial officer was saying about certain things. It was a little bit more faith-based too. So I just integrate some of the ministry aspect of it, asking, hey, how do you know you're like, how does your boss lead from a faith-based kind of mindset, and hearing how they'd respond to that. But it was so cool, man. Even though when I stopped the podcast, I was like, I still kind of miss going to some of like these CEOs business, like staff meetings and being in their boardroom, just seeing different aspects and how certain people would handle and manage conflict and delegate responsibility, whatnot. It was neat. But you talking about this podcast reminded me of that. There's so much value other than just the views you get from it or however you monetize it. But yeah.
Yeah, we see it as a three-way value add. It's hopefully valuable for the listeners, hearing awesome stories, having a front row seat to people that have done great things after serving. It's also valuable for our guests. Hopefully, maybe you'll get some traction from this. Maybe somebody reaches out, has questions, that sort of thing. And then it's valuable for us because Jack and I have made connections with 44 published episodes. Probably 80% of them are people that we wouldn't have talked to otherwise, maybe more than that. And so we just have a great excuse to have a cool 1 hour long conversation with great people and see where it leads, see what kind of connections and value we can drive through it. So it's been a great experience. And our goal is maybe somebody listens to this and they decide that a VA home loan is a great way to have some passive income or a great way to start their wealth building journey. And so the least we can do is start that thought in their head and see if we can put them down a good path.
That's awesome, Griffin. I all see things like obviously from a high level, 3-dimensional, and it's good that the value exchange is there. And so in the spirit of what Griffin's talking about, like you never know who you're going to talk to for an hour or whatever. I'm going to be really excited to keep our communication lines open because you might be somebody I need to connect with. What I didn't know is that you're actually lending yourself.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure all of the listeners know that I'll definitely be able to outperform your pricing if they a second option at all. I don't even know. Where do you hang your license at?
I'm with Edge. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Frankly, for us, it's just one piece of the pie, I suppose. I was doing it while I was active duty, and it is something that I'm very focused on being a very good loan officer for my clients, but I'm not necessarily the best business like growing my loan officer business, right? Because we have so many other things going on. Like I really haven't tried to expand the loan officer side. I just focused on being an absolute expert on VA home loans. And really, I can do a unique loan, of course. I'm able to figure things out, and I've got a really good network of people that support me. But we hone in on helping a few people really well, right? That's kind of what our goal is. It's not necessarily to help a lot of different people. We just really want to provide the best performance and the best service for every single person that we work with. And frankly, it's led to tons of referrals and people who trust us and kind of will use, and on the loan officer side, use me for their next 5 loans, right? That's where our business stems from, more so than just, hey, let me get as many done as possible. Because I'm just such a person to person guy. I've always kind of said I'm not an opener. I'm more of a closer. I like to maintain the relationship and really pour into people as opposed to right off the bat. Courtney calls me an acquired taste in some ways.
In the Navy, we would say, but you're a grower, not a shower. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been told that before too. Not by Courtney.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, that's what real estate is, right? It's creating connections and finding people who you want to work with, people who you connect with, right? Because it's like, how can you tell somebody that you believe in somebody if you're like, I actually hate this person. This is who I need to send the business to. But that's what I've realized is like the people, and especially with the brokerage, we want to bring people on who are like-minded, who understand what we're trying to do. A big part of our thing is not convincing. We're more attracting people who want to buy homes. Like we're not convincing the E3 with 4 kids to buy a house in Hawaii, right? We're finding people who want to buy, who are excited to buy, and we're going to educate them the right way to do it and make sure that they're taken care of.
Why wouldn't you force that E3 with 4 kids?
I mean, plenty do. And I'll tell you, I'm really glad that we're in a position to be able to make that decision. Yeah, because it's not about the next paycheck necessarily.
What's wrong with the E304? I seriously want to know your thoughts on that. I would close them so fast, and I consider myself to be a pretty ethical guy. But
so
unpack that.
It depends, right? I'll say we're here to advise people. There are some E3s with 4 kids who it's absolutely the right call. But if you're an E3 with 4 kids who might be here for less than 2 years, I think that there's some agents who will force them into maybe a 2-bedroom condo because that's all they can afford. Whereas the other option might be to, hey, give them a little bit of guidance. Frankly, I think everybody should buy, right? I'm not saying that they shouldn't buy just because they're an E3, but depending on their financial situation, like sometimes it's more about, let me close this deal because I have to pay my bills. That's where really I think where I draw the line. Am I closing the deal because I must pay my electric bill, or am I closing the deal because I think it's a good deal for this consumer? Then absolutely close the deal, right?
When I was working on a book where I was piggybacking off of the premise of The Richest Man in Babylon, and I wanted to call it The Richest Man in the Military, and the whole premise was built around if I had to go back and do it all over again. And the advice that I would have given to myself would have been to purchase my first home in Hawaii as an E3. And when I talk about that, I talk about primarily BAH, basic allowance for housing. And as soon as it hits your hands, it's going in one of 2 places, either somebody else's mortgage through base housing or rent, or to your own by investing in yourself. And so as a nuclear engineer in the military, they teach you quality assurance and kind of mitigating risk. And when people tell me buying in Hawaii is risky, I tell them, well, what's worse than 100% risk? Because that's what you're doing when you're forfeiting to Uncle Sam by living on post. There's a 100% chance you'll never see that BAH again. So instead, let's look at this 2-bedroom apartment. We stack your kids in a bunk bed, because if the alternative is base housing isn't that nice either, especially for an E3, so you might be in Makakilo with some roaches, but I mean, it's all about preserving that BAH to some capacity. And so I think you and I will have a fun conversation, because I'm actually pretty aggressive with some of our military members, not for the status of closing one more loan, but I just imagine that E3 at some point will be 15 years down the road saying, man, I was stationed in Hawaii once receiving X amount of BAH, and I have nothing to show for it other than these cool photos at the Arizona Memorial. I wish I'd have had a chief kind of grab me and sit me down and be a little bit more assertive with the communication piece to it. So, but yeah, I always say if you got BAH, you owe somebody 30 minutes of your time before you sign that lease agreement, because BAH in Hawaii is probably the highest you ever receive in your military career.
It's true. Where I'm coming from is if they're going to keep it long term, and we manage 200 properties as rentals, right? So we know the rental market.
Well?
What's that?
Y'all do property management as well?
Yeah. That's our, with the brokerage. That was the reason why we pursued actually owning the brokerage, is because of the property management side.
Doing it so good, bro. I'm so impressed by that.
Thank you.
So crazy. Because you just got out of the military like a couple years ago, right?
They're crushing it. Can't overstate.
14 months.
Griffin, are you involved in this operation?
Only as a third-party observer and admirer.
Nice. No,
Yeah. So the point of that though is because like we know really what it's gonna. Of course, nobody has a crystal ball.
of
But we
course.
can anticipate what that property is going to rent out for. And when we look at it on the buy side, if we think it's going to be a negative $1,500 a month cash flow when they leave, then we know that person's either going to be forced into selling it, which if they can tell me like, hey, I'm Air Force, I'm going to be here for 4 years with the possibility of extending for another two, do absolutely. Let's go. Let's get it done. But if it's oftentimes the Marines or the Army, they are here for less than 3 years. And I'm so for it if they think that they can manage that. But what we're about is explaining everything because I think that if I explain everything, the logical outcome is yes, it's the right call to buy. We've had business relationships in the past with people who leave things out, and then that leads to issues down the line when it's, hey, I'm going to, let's say the loan officer side, right? Hey, let's do this refinance, but they're not aware that they're adding 10 grand to the loan amount, right? Let's be upfront about adding 10 grand to the loan amount and still show why it's a good deal and why you should be doing it because it's going to save you $1,000 a month and it's a 10-month break even, right? I
Sure.
think that's the difference there. It's absolutely, I agree with you. It's the right call for everybody to buy in Hawaii.
Well, no, your heart is showing through. I mean, ethics and morality are unfortunately missing in our industry. And I think that's the real enemy there and the lack of information. But where I come from is the time you're in Hawaii doesn't really matter. If I were stationed in Hawaii for 3 years, but it turned out I got orders a month later, I would have wished I would have bought in that month. Because if you know what your 30-year mortgage payment is going to be, and you have a real estate agent like yourself that's going to run proper rental market analysis, those two
Mhm.
numbers tell me everything I need to know. And so the 7 properties that I purchased in Hawaii were all within an 8-year time frame. Like I was one at a time, right after the other, because I had a strong property management consultant. And before I would waste my Saturday morning to go look at the property or the 5 properties, I had 5 rental market analysis in front of me already telling me what I needed to know. Because I knew once my wife saw the countertops and the backsplash, she was going to get excited. And so I didn't want her to get excited if there was $1,000 month delta, in which case I would have never going to pull the trigger. Because if I get orders somewhere else into like San Antonio where BAH is only 1,600 and I'm
Mhm.
sending 1,000 back to Hawaii to cover that delta and then paying my property manager 8%, well, how am I going to live in San Antonio now? All my BAH is going back to Hawaii. And next thing if you can't afford to keep your mortgage, you start dealing with foreclosures. A foreclosure with somebody that has top secret clearance for the Army, and that clearance goes away. And when that clearance goes away, maybe the Army doesn't need you anymore. And I warn veterans all the time: short-term real estate can squash you like a bug. But just like the military, they teach you an advanced strategy, but also there's 3 exit strategies associated with every advance. So tell me, what was your exit strategy whenever you were going to get orders? Oh, I thought I was going to sell my house and make all sorts of money like my friend did. And I'm like, well, your friend's an idiot because that's not always the case. And if you're only stationed here 3 years, when you're buying at a house at 102.15%, rolling in your VA funding fee, and then you're going to pay an agent 6% to sell it and think that you're going to make enough appreciation over 3 years to accommodate those costs, it's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So, what was the rental market analysis report that you looked at before your realtor picked you up? They're like, I've never even heard that term. And I'm like, well, your agent's an idiot too. And instead, they're hyping them up on the Walmart that's going to be built down the road. And look what they're doing with Ala Moana Mall. They're expanding it. You should totally buy over here. No, I'm wearing the cloth of our nation. That that there's a chance I could leave this island. So tell me, what do I do with this property you're going to get me into whenever I get those orders? And if you don't have an answer to that, you shouldn't pick up the veteran in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, that's spot on. That's
yeah.
spot on. We had one person reach out to Courtney to manage their property and she got their mortgage statement. They said they had been on island for 3 years and the mortgage statement, they had just bought like a year prior. And she was like, what? I thought you said you bought when you got here. And he goes, oh, well, I did. I bought a ground level unit that had 2 parking spaces and it was really great. And my realtor told me that this other place that I just bought would be better to rent out. So the realtor had him sell that property, bought an upstairs unit with only 1 parking spot that rented out for probably $600 less. That he cashed like $20,000 when he sold the first property.
Yeah.
But the realtor was representing him on the sale, representing him on the buy, and was representing the seller on the sell side of the new condo. So it was like, it just seemed like the realtor was kind of lining their pockets more so than advising on what the right call would have been. Just, hey, keep that house. If you could buy another one, great. But that other house was a great buy. And now that you switched into the second one, it was actually not good for you. Right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things we advise people through a lens of absolutely like buying real estate in general, but Hawaii specifically is a phenomenal thing, and buying and holding, right? That white knuckle, just wait for the market, your retirement, like the Hawaii market will continue to rise.
When you think about how like 85% of our military don't utilize this VA home loan benefit, getting into that's a symptom. That's not the problem. I mean, the problem is something else. The symptom is what we're seeing here. And I think a lot of them just aren't educated on property management. So before I'm trying to sell a living room or countertops, I'm trying to sell a property manager, really. And I just tell a veteran, you don't have to listen to me, but you just need to explain to me, what does your life look like going through duty station to duty station renting? You're going to be carrying the certificate of eligibility around in your back pocket everywhere for 3 years at a time, because there's another reason. Most people, I'm only stationed here 3 years. Well, how long are you at the next duty station and the next duty station? Because 3 + 3 adds up to 21 pretty fast. And when we're staring at 2046 and you're looking back to saying, I wish I would have bought in 2025, everything's inflated now. I'm going to say, well, yeah, me too. But remember that sorry ass excuse you carried around, which was you're only going to be here 3 years. And that's just how the military works. Unfortunately, you're always only somewhere for 3 years. So we got to kind of tackle that as the problem and realize, well, it's more psychological, because them thinking they're only going to be there 3 years are thinking, I can't buy a house and sell it in 3 years. And you're absolutely right. You can't. So it's long-term real estate, long-term hold. How do I protect my investment? But then also understand that like a lot of husbands, they don't want to go off to war and put their wife in a bad part of Waipahu when their kids are getting bullied. That's why base housing is so attractive, because I know my family is safe while I'm keeping the bad guys off American soil. So there's the understanding as well, and not being so judgmental. People want to be near the commissary. They want to be near the other military spouses. They want to, but yeah. Are we filming right? Are we on the podcast right now? Is this how y'all roll?
We roll.
We can cut out all the things like when you gave your social security number and those sort of things. We'll just cut that out.
I just looked up and I was like, oh, it's 2:30. Do we start at 2? And then I was like, man, I see you're recording. So, all right.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're live.
One of the reasons, I mean, obviously I just cold called you because I wanted our friends to move in next door, but I did a little bit of research ahead of time, and a lot of what's online for you is just education about the VA loan, which makes sense, but you're really in the spotlight as far as educating a lot of people. So that was one of the things that I did want to give you a chance, and we've already kind of touched on it and everything. With that, with so few people using the VA loan, we try to, this is a career transition podcast. That's generally the focus, but we also try to give a lot of information about just what's out there and what people should be doing and what they should be using as far as the benefits of being a veteran. Of course, just knowing about the VA loan is the first battle. Something I hear often is, I just want to wait to use it till I buy my forever home, my retirement home. And what do you talk with people about when they say that?
I say, what's that wait going to cost you? I mean, there's a cost of opportunity to go and buy. You look at Hawaii, and let's assume that you're getting $2,500 a month in BAH. That comes out to be, what is that, $30,000 a year. You're stationed there 4 years. That's $120,000. That wait just cost you $120K in 4 years. And then how much longer do you want to wait after that? And then how much does that cost? And so I think that there's an opportunity to buy while you wait, which is a really weird thing to explain to somebody, because it sounds gimmicky, but in the spirit of wanting to wait till you buy your forever home, there's usually at least 3 homes in front of that. And it's all about preserving your BAH or preserving your rent so that you can posture yourself to buy that home forever, because you're choosing 2 people to pay every month. It's either yourself or someone else. And I hope none of my tenants in Hawaii listen to this podcast. I think y'all are doing great. I think renting is definitely the way to success, and I wish all the best. But in reality, I mean, sometimes the first time a lot of our veterans own a piece of the country they defended is when they're buried in it 6 feet deep. And I think that that's a horrible time, because we can't transfer that dirt to the next person. So I think really kind of getting out of the mindset that we're going to hold this thing like it's a rookie card of Jordan. It's no, your certificate of eligibility is going to burn through a lot of real estate until you actually get to the real estate that you raise your family in. And you just got to get comfortable understanding that, So,
right.
I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Oh yeah.
How do you answer that, Jack? I mean, yeah, because I mean, that is probably that comes up quite often.
Yeah, kind of goes similar. I talk about how this house that you buy here in Hawaii, or really any house before that retirement home, if you grab it now and are able to rent it out, eventually that is what's gonna leapfrog into the purchase. Whether you sell it or whether it eventually starts to provide cash flow to be able to qualify for that next house. Or really, what I talk to as well is this house right now might rent out for 3,500 a month. I look at what 3,500 a month is as far as retirement income from the lieutenant colonel retirement with 20 years is about $3,500 a month base pay, right? And that's right. Like literally this property is going to grow in with inflation. The rent's going to grow with inflation. So that rent will probably keep up with that retirement. And if you're thinking that this home purchase is going to basically keep up with your retirement income from base pay, that to me is where I talk with people. It's yeah, it might not be paid off right now. It might not be cash flowing right now, but 30 years from now, it will be paid off. And that will be equivalent to whatever retirement you're earning with the military. And that's to me incredibly impactful as far as what your decision is going to be when you go to buy that forever house, right?
And
So
that's so good. I think kind of like what we were just talking about earlier, I think if you just take the simple math of how much you're receiving in BAH, because if you look at your LES, most of the time your base pay is the highest producing source of income above your base pay, above your BAS, above your foreign language pro pay, C pay, hazard pay, whatever pay you're getting, usually your BAH is pretty high up there. And I would even say that even for America and the citizens in itself, that's normally the biggest expense in a household is your housing. And so I just ask military members, just calculate how much you're going to spend over the next 3 to 4 years that you're stationed here. And especially in Hawaii, I mean, the math is crazy. They come up with six figures, usually 100,000 plus. And I say, is that not worth a 30-minute conversation before you decide? Because the problem is a lot of military members, especially Army, when they PCS, they get their tuition allowance for lodging at their TLA, I think it is.
yep.
And so they're stuck in a one-bedroom hotel with Sarah and Susie and Sally and their dog Waffles barking, and they just want to hurry up and get out of there. So they're quick to go sign a lease. And they think, man, I don't have much time to go find a house. Let me just sign a 12-month lease. And that 12-month turns into 3 years really quickly. And then next thing you know, they're rotating to the next place and it's rinse and repeat. So I say, if we can both agree that you're going to receive about $90,000 over the next 3 years, can I just get on a Zoom call with you and just share with you, like, you have options? If we hang up that Zoom call and you just still decide to go rent, like, I can live with that. But the fact of the matter is, I would say the majority of our military, they'll text me like, hey, traffic's bad, or hey, something came up. And I'm like, wow, that's the thing that kept you from actually making a decision here, like traffic, because we were on H2 North and getting up to Waipahu wasn't always easy. But I was just thinking in my head, that veteran's going to go spend $90,000 living on post because of traffic. And that's crazy to me. But it's just navigating through not so much like what happens if you buy real estate, but what happens if you don't. And how long can you afford to not own real estate? I mean, we've all played Monopoly, and I will wipe you out if everything you land on, you refuse to buy. At some point, you got to get something and hope that somebody lands on that spot behind you. So,
Yeah. We have a
yeah,
really great calculator too that just shows simple, hey, what's the purchase price? And then
yeah,
we compare 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, and 5% annual appreciation and
that's good.
over time. And now we very upfront, not every year is going to go up, but if we average it out, right? Like you look at Hawaii real estate's between 4 and 5% average annual appreciation. If you even choose 1%, that's going to outpace. And it's an incredible savings that people are experiencing. So we talk very highly of buying and holding these properties and really making it a long-term decision.
What
But
sucks about like Hawaii, and I don't know how, just, I mean, because it's a veteran podcast, I don't know how deep you guys get into politics, but understanding the difference between buying in a blue state versus buying in a red state is something that I kind of learned the hard way. And so, in the spirit of what you do, in the spirit of what I do, there's only really so far you can lead the veteran to education. I mean, we could talk about how to navigate through a bad home inspection report. Hey, dude, you're about to scuttle this deal over a $500 leaky faucet and go back and live on post. We can overcome a lot of objectives and obstacles, and we could talk about 1% growth rates and what the market's doing. But there's just certain things that you don't know until I didn't know Maui was going to catch fire. And I was thinking, even as I was like watching the news from Texas, wow, Maui's burning down right now. What I wasn't thinking is, oh no, my insurance premiums are about to shoot up because somebody's going to have to pay for those houses to get rebuilt. And if it's going to come from Liberty Mutual or whoever I insure, my premiums are probably going to go up and my HOAs are probably going to go up. And I wasn't thinking like that, but that's exactly what happened. And then I also wasn't thinking during an epidemic like COVID that there's a lot of hotel workers and industry workers in some of these states that are renting from you. And if they get furloughed or laid off and they stop making rent, I can't just kick them out as easily as I can in a red state, because there's different tenancy laws depending on who your governor is. And so, I mean, I had some property that was sitting for 3 months where the mortgage was still due, and that's my responsibility as the landlord, but their rent wasn't due, thanks United States government. And I was telling my property manager, kick him out. And she was like, I can't. I'm like, well, let's do something, throw rocks. So you don't know all the intricacies that come with home ownership, but all I know is one fact remains true. And the average net worth of a homeowner is $253,000 versus that of a renter being $6,300. That margin always works itself out. It'll always work itself out. That's just how the law of averages work. But you got to be able to get through these monthly nuances, sometimes these seasonally nuances, sometimes annual nuances. And you can only control what you can control. But like you said, you definitely can't predict the future, but you sure as heck can learn from the past. And every 7 years, Hawaii has almost doubled in its median sales price. So it is buy and hang on tight. And I think right now the statistics are actually pretty good. They say like 98% of VA buyers in Hawaii are avoiding foreclosures and short sales, which means only 2% are really blowing it. And they're probably the Coast Guard or something like that, because I know no sailors or Marines are letting that happen. So,
right. Well, it's interesting, like assuming some of those 2% are also just unique situations, maybe divorces where they're or forced into selling and just can't. Whereas we really try to provide other options for people. Selling isn't the only way to get out of this house, right?
Yeah, or situations.
Go ahead, Griffin.
I was gonna say, or situations where that real estate agent is triple dipping. There's other things that are causing that too.
You put their names in the comment section, Griffin. Just shout them out. Let's tag them. There's a lot of responsibility on the lender. The listing agents always get a bad rap saying you have a fiduciary duty. Well, us lenders, we have a fiduciary duty as well. And there's a lot of knuckleheads out there and a lot of individuals who want to say they're a VA player and, hey, I help VA buyers. And that's all great. And I hope you do. And I hope you do a great job. But if you're not keeping up with addendums and revisions and things that are being introduced to the VA, what a lot of people didn't see is the circular that came out in 2020 to stop foreclosures when COVID happened, because there was such a reaction to the economy and people weren't able to keep up. And so the VA actually froze foreclosures from happening. But what ended up happening is wholesalers came out of the woodworks and they started targeting our veterans to say, hey, here's a juicy prime VA interest rate, and coming up with wraparounds and all these types of different creative financing to get the veteran out of the house, preserve them from having to go through foreclosure. Where had they had a lender who understood, like, hey, you don't have to do all that. There is an actual relief right now for you. Just take a deep breath and let's talk through this. And so I go back to there's VA lenders, there's VA loan officers, and there's just people who like obsess over this stuff. And I couldn't get that circular out fast enough. Like I was pushing it to all the real estate agents I knew. I was like, hey, if you know any veterans who call you or ask you or tell you they're going through hard times, please let me talk to them. There's no profit in that. Like I, as a lender, I don't get paid off of pushing that circular. It's just what veterans deserve to know, though. It's information that they need to be aware of. And I pissed a lot of wholesalers off, letting them know you don't have to go and do this. But yeah.
That's right. When I started in loans, I was right around 2020, and that's when things were very different.
Interesting time.
I kind of started when everything was up in the air with COVID, and then right into the craziness of 2021 and 2022. That was a really unique time to start in loans, and I was doing it while still active duty, but it was very much so just obviously driven by the research side of things. I want to know everything about everything so that way I can provide the best option. Because what I've seen too is a lot of people in this industry, they understand what they would do in this situation, and then that's just what they pitch, right? They pitch the one trick pony type of thing. And I've really tried to build my business on understanding the full situation, not of just the client, but also what is out there, what programs are out there. Maybe the shoe that fits me isn't exactly what they need to do based on their goals.
Jack, if I were on your team, and I worked with you at your brokerage, like I would just encourage you daily to say, a guy like you who I see is wanting to do right by the veteran and you're top tier. If I'm not giving you my best, you don't deserve any of me. Call Wells Fargo and apply for a VA home loan and just go through that process and see, like, my standards were so high on how I performed that what ended up happening is I would get so wrapped up in one loan that I had 9 people on hold. And where I feel like I got to get, and this might not come out popular on a podcast, I got to give the veteran 70% of me. But I know my 70% is better than the 10% you're going to get from most people out there. It's an honest 70%. It's an ethical 70%. It's going to be my best advice 70%. But when you start to call some of these other competitors, you're like, just while you're on hold, don't call them. Stand by. I'm getting to you. And I realize there's a big margin. There's the guys like Jack who like are white glove service. And then there's the rest of the industry where I would go as far as saying 90% of lenders are at. And they're just dumb, man. They're dumb or they're unethical. I mean, and there's some good ones out there, but as far and few in between, especially after COVID, a lot of people that entered the industry because they wanted to catch the refinances and make $1 million like their buddies did. They're still getting flushed out today, of course, but I had to lower my standards a little bit because I had to realize, man, I got to get some more veterans who are just really seeing some crap out there, figuring out what that system looked like for us. But yeah, I still have fun with it, man. I'll do a sales training and I'll call one of these big box lenders live and I'll put Bob, the online operator, in a really uncomfortable place. I said, Bob, before you pull my interest rates or pull my credit and we look at interest rates, who'd you vote for? And well, here at we really try not to, but I'm like, well, man, I'm curious because my wife's leaving me and I'm trying to figure, well, and I'll hang up and I'll tell my loan officer, this is how you definitely don't respond to this stuff. And I shouldn't
people
do it.
Open up. I mean, that's actually not wrong. People legitimately, I mean, like those conversations absolutely could go that way.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I would tell if you call me, like, who'd you vote for? I would exactly tell you. What I wouldn't know is that I was on a recorded call in front of 40 other loan officers, but yeah, it's just for fun.
What we've done to kind of create that, hey, like, I like what you said about like the 70% thing, and it doesn't come off the wrong way because anybody who's got a brain can understand what you're saying, right? It's not that you're not giving your all. It's that you're understanding like your 70% is enough to provide people. And I think the way I look at that is I offload everything that the client doesn't care about. Or shouldn't care about, right? So we've got a good processing team. We've got people who like support me in doing the stuff that frankly, I don't care. I don't care about going and contacting to get condo docs. What I do care about is getting the condo docs and having a discussion with them, with the client about it. But I would rather, I don't know what I'd rather do, but I do not want to call a condo association to get condo docs, right?
He'll do
So
Hole
I've
12
taken
before
everything like that. Yeah. Yeah. I'll dive into the water at hole 12. But
So funny.
But it's been beneficial because every decision we make is through the lens of the client, right? It's what is the client wants to have the high level discussion with me about what the decision is, not, hey, did I send Jack my bank statement or did I send his loan processor who he introduced and who I know and I trust right away, right? Like there's a big difference between the two. And I think to your point though, some of the bad loan officers don't know how to delegate that authority and they delegate the wrong things. And then they lose track of what the client actually wants. They want to confide in Jack and Courtney. They want the guidance. And another big thing I always say to people is, I'm not the decision maker, right? I'm just a staff officer giving you all of the information, and I'm going to give you a recommendation. But at the end of the day, you have the decision authority to make the call. I'm just going to make sure it's the right call, right? And that's where we go with a lot of this. But I am available to have those conversations because we've been very diligent about taking the things that I don't have to do off of my plate. And we've hired the right people. We're really happy that the team we have is just phenomenal. We really enjoy the people we work with too.
I would use you as my loan officer, Jack. You definitely communicate that extremely well. And I think that's what, not just our military buyers, I think that's what all buyers deserve. I think our industry is filled with so much jargon where you can hide things, hidden things, feed things. I mean, I pull up some websites and I show them what the fine print says. Like I zoom it in my seminars and I'm like, just because I know nobody's reading this, let me just read it to you. But I think having that sound person up front, and kind of the same way I would tell all my buyers, I am impossible to get a hold of. And so this 10 minutes that we're talking right now, I'm going to turn it over to Rylan, and Rylan will get his ass beat if he doesn't reply to you within 5 minutes. Like that, my job, the reason I'm so busy is because I'm busy beating Rylan's ass when he doesn't respond to you. And so just setting the precedence of how my team works, how we're going to be communicating with you. I definitely will be there at your closing. My job is I'm PR facing. I'm the guy who gets all the credit for doing 7% of the work. And I create just kind of an informal environment, joking with them, but setting that standard of, hey, to, like you're saying, I'm the officer making sure things are happening. Here's my top dog who's going to be up at 11 p.m. When you can't sleep, he can't sleep either. Those are the rules. So, man, we found a lot of success, did a lot of cool things with that, established essentially a company eventually with that. But it's really just knowing your audience, having a high enough EQ to know how your military members are moving. I explained to a lot of my team, like when I was buying my first house in Hawaii, I was stationed on the USS Olympia, and I had to beg my chief for 48 hours to go look at real estate. I was investing in Edward Jones at the time, and my financial advisor told me, like, hey, man, you're depositing a lot of money pretty frequently. Have you ever thought of buying a house? What I didn't know is he was going to refer me to his wife, who was a real estate agent. And I'm like a little bit in cahoots there, maybe. I don't know how Edward Jones guys are held, but there's probably some RESPA thing there. But I took his word for it. And I also had a chief in my ear who was talking to me about buying, and I mixed the two together, went and bought a house. But I only had 48 hours to do it. So I remember the first lender I called didn't answer. And so I just called the next one. And then I called the next one. And it was the first one that answered was essentially my lender, which eventually turned out to be a huge mistake. But if you don't understand that about your audience, you don't understand your military members don't have 3 days to wait for you to call them back. It's everything's on the go. Then yeah, that just won't be your audience at all, or for much longer anyway.
Chris, this has been an atypical conversation for the podcast, and typically we dive a little bit more into your story, so I'd like to address that as well. But it's clear that you're very knowledgeable about this whole process. You're very passionate about it, which shines through very apparently, which I love. Right. And you're a skilled conversationalist as well, so it's no surprise that you've seen a lot of success in this business. But I'm curious, you mentioned having bought 7 houses in Hawaii in 8 years and starting as a junior enlisted sailor. How did you, maybe focusing on that, but talking through your kind of military experience and transition out of the military, how did you afford to buy 7 houses in Hawaii? Because you mentioned that excuse yourself. A lot of people say, well, I can't afford it. I'm not going to be here that long. I'm just an E3 with a couple kids. Like, how did you overcome all those excuses when it sounds like you didn't have a mentor that was guiding you, except for maybe that chief?
Yeah, Chief Audio. I always give him credit. And thanks for that question. It's a good one. So y'all probably know this, having served, but not everybody joined the military for patriotic reasons. A lot of them joined because they didn't have the next step in mind after college, or some didn't go to college, right? And some couldn't afford college. So why not join the military? I fell into that category. So I wasn't prepared for next steps after high school, joined the military with a very lack of understanding of financial literacy. And it, as embarrassing as it was, I would shy away from smart conversations people were having. And that was the majority of our command. And surrounded by other E4s and E5s, nobody is really talking at this high level. I know the Air Force has probably better financial classes than most branches, but in the Navy, out to sea, it was just like, where are we going when we pull into Guam? What bars are we? And let's buy a rug when we get to Afghanistan. What? Why? Who's telling us to spend our money on these things? But I heard a chief, and it wasn't the same chief, but I heard a chief once ask, if you don't prepare to get out of the Navy, you never will. And I asked him what he meant by that. And he meant most people who re-enlist because they were never really prepared to get out. And I was approaching my 10-year point. And I said, Chief, what's a number that I should have saved up? I don't even know what my next steps are going to be, but I don't think 10 more years is where I want to go. And he was like, well, man, just try to put away $1,000 a month. See if you can come up with 12 grand. And I was embarrassed that after so much time, I still didn't have 12 grand saved up. Like, where is my money going? And so that's when my financial advisor came into my life, and he asked me the question of what I'd been using my BAH for. And I was renting out in town with other sailors, and my portion of BAH was like $500 a month, and I was receiving $2,300. So where was that other $1,800 going? I was banking with BAH. So I decided in the last year of my naval career to tighten it up, get serious about this, went house shopping, found it was a little 2-bedroom townhome in Kahala for $412,000. And I convinced another sailor to buy it with me because I didn't have the resources to do it on my own, or I don't think I qualified on my own. So we split entitlement. And so now I'm 50% owner of this townhome. Well, the military guy I bought with gets kicked out of the Navy for a danger tag violation because we were both in the nuclear Navy. And when it comes to nuclear systems, like it's one strike, you're out. And he made a mistake that got him kicked out. So I was forced to have to rent out his half of the house. And now it's called house hacking, and it's like a cool term, and people are teaching it on TikTok. I had to discover house hacking the hard way. I was like, hey, Brendan, we owe $3,000 a month on this thing. You're going to move back to LA where you're from. You better be sending me my $1,500 every month. Well, I go back to college and I don't know how I'm going to. And so I found a tenant who was willing to pay $1,700 for that bedroom. And then I thought, well, if they're paying 17 for that bedroom, I got the bigger bedroom. Maybe I can get more and actually cash flow this thing. And so I did. I moved out of that house and I rented out the whole thing. And this fire lit underneath me. I was like, I wonder if I can do this again. And so now I'm getting out of the military. I'm reaching my 10th year. And the guy told me, he said, you're doing nuclear power, which means that you probably understand tech manuals and studying. Would you want to go to Houston and be a wind engineer? And I was on my way to Houston. I was going to take this job as a wind engineer. And I met a guy named Tony Diaz. And Tony asked me the question of, would I ever consider sales? And I said, yeah, I think that'd be neat, but I got to go back to San Antonio and be with my family. And he said, well, come to this meeting. And I went to this Keller Williams meeting that he was going to do a brief on VA loans at. And,
how did you connect with him, by the way? Was it just
a mutual friend? I don't know if we were at a golf course or where we were, but a mutual friend. And Tony was a Marine. Him and I were just having veteran conversation. There was no reason we should have met. We were just in the same place. I was not in the mortgage space. I wasn't doing anything. We crossed paths. So I get invited to this Keller Williams. It was probably like a weekly class, probably their staff meeting or something. And he was the guest speaker that day talking about the VA loan. And another guy was trying to pull me in to be a realtor at that KW office. And so I decided after hearing Tony talk for 30 minutes that I would rather be on his team on the loan side than actually be a real estate agent. I can't pretend to care about countertops and cabinets and stuff. But numbers always made sense to me. So I went to work with Tony. And after the first year, I probably cleared about $130,000 in commissions. And this dirt lot comes available in Huacalay. And the realtor that I was going to join, his name was Rustin Tong, was like, hey, dude, there's a really good opportunity in Huacalay coming up. They're building this golf course out there. It's about $800,000. And I was thinking, okay, well, what does it look like to qualify for an $800,000 loan? I own half of a townhome in Kahala, but we're profiting in our rent because I got 2 tenants in there. And I called, I think it was I don't know who my loan, Penny Mac or Freedom or somebody. And based on your 1-year commission and based on your time and service, you qualify, Mr. Cano. And I was like, wow, you're going to give me the money to buy this house? It was a 5-bedroom house and I'm a single guy. Or I don't know, Jack, you probably know, it may be a 4-bedroom, but it's a big house, right? Bro, I had an ironing board in one of the bedrooms. It was like my ironing room. I had one room that I put like the Veterans United logo on the wall. And I was like, this would be my office. There was like a yoga room. It was so empty, Jack, because you know what these houses look like. Like I was like, I can't live here, but the VA required me to live in there for a year and intend to occupy it. So as I was living there, I continued being a loan officer, making, the same amount of money, a little bit more, but I immediately moved out of it, put a tenant in there. And in moving out of it, I needed to jump into something else. But at this point I was out of entitlement. So I learned about Navy Federal's zero down military choice loan, because now, again, I'm in the industry, so I'm studying this stuff. And the encouragement that I give most veterans who are like, I want to build a real estate portfolio the way you did. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you want to do it the way I did, because the way I did required me joining the lending world. If you want to get good at finances, get fully into it and go study it. A lot of people think you need to become a real estate agent to understand real estate investing. I would disagree. You need to understand finances and how to leverage money and borrow money. So after that, it was just one at a time. By about house number 3 or 4, I was accumulating enough money as a loan officer that I could put 25% down on the next property. But after that, everything started turning to equity. Hawaii prices started going up. I started to leverage some of the equity I had in the houses that I was purchasing, because when you buy with zero down, it takes a while for that appreciation to start to gather itself up. And man, from there, I was just off to the races. It seemed like the more success that I was seeing, the more people wanted to attend our seminars and our briefs, because I think the mindset a lot of veterans have is, hey, I'm so busy. I don't want to learn how to do it. Just tell me how to do it. And I was kind of, in a way, without bragging, I was proving my success and my methods and my models, but I was also, full disclosure, making a lot of money. So the one advantage that I had is I could stomach the $2,000 loss in over here, or if something broke, I could afford to fix it, as opposed to the veteran who's scraping by, might not have those same luxuries. So from there, it turned into, my loan officer position turned into a partner position. Tony and I became business partners. I got offered a role to go to San Diego and resuscitate a San Diego Veterans United office that was kind of dying on the vine. And after being there for 3 months, this was in 2015, I got news that my father had passed away back in San Antonio. So I told the CEO of Veterans United, his name's Nate Long. I said, Nate, I'm going to San Antonio with or without Veterans United, but I need to be home with my family. I'd love to open an office there. Again, it's your company. And he said, Chris, we've been wanting to be in San Antonio for a while now. Let's do it. So I launched Veterans United San Antonio in the season of my father's death in 2015. And my business partner, Tony, and I decided at the time, like, hey, we've been running our corporate office out of Hawaii, which is really expensive to run a company out of. Maybe let's move everything to San Antonio. And so I bought a commercial building out here for $3 million in 2017, I think it was. And we staffed it up, and we just basically changed our whole model, changed everything up, decided to do it at a cheaper cost here in San Antonio. But at this point, now we're buying commercial real estate, and I'm kind of starting to see where the big players are living. I'm using these properties that I bought in Hawaii as down payments and equity and leverage to the banker to go buy a $3 million building. We outgrew the $3 million building in 2020. We bought a $10.5 million building that fit 400 people. I'm using the leverage from the $3 million building and then everything just, and so when I do seminars, I always explain, I'll never forget the $412,000 townhome, owning half of it. I owned a $206,000 townhome essentially. Right. But that propelled me to the $800,000 Huakale home, propelled me to the 6 other homes, which propelled me to the building, to the buildings. All the while, my source of income is just sharing with people what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and encouraging loan officers to follow suit.
Well, I'd like to highlight the point that you mentioned moving to Houston and getting out of the Navy, moving back to the mainland with a very different idea in mind. You had no intentions of the route that you took, but oftentimes our primary course of action takes a pivot. And it's whether it's through a relationship or just a new opportunity that you stumble upon. In your case, oftentimes people get wrapped around the axle of what am I going to do? What am I going to devote the next 10 years of my life to after service? When in reality, you got to leave space for that to change. You got to leave space for it to take a left turn like yours did and result in something far better.
Thank you for that, Griffin. My business partner, Cody, just walked in here. That's who I'm waving at. You want to say hi to Cody real quick? Cody primarily runs our production and sales.
Nice.
Griffin here with XO. They both served, both officers, and they both now run this podcast together.
Nice.
Yeah.
And both of y'all are in real estate and in lending.
Well, Jack.
So my wife and I own a real estate brokerage here in Hawaii, and I'm also a loan officer. Yeah.
Oh, good deal. Good deal. And Griffin, what about you?
I've got some rental properties in Georgia. That's about the extent of I worked in real estate private equity for a little bit and syndications, but currently in acquisitions for different types of businesses.
Y'all didn't get enough of each other in the military?
Maybe Griffin got enough of me, but no, that's one of the things we love. And we talked about the things that we take away from this, partially just getting an hour a week with Griffin too. For me, like, you guys don't know him well enough. He's as far as high performers are concerned, and especially ethically high performers, he's one of the most capable people I've ever worked with, and one of the downright, he's just a good dude. So the fact that I get to spend an hour a week with him, and also then talking on the side, hey, here's a business idea, let's talk through it. He's been my sounding board for the last couple of years on everything we've done business wise. So it's been really
Griffin,
great.
how does it feel to receive that kind of appreciation? I've never heard a partner compliment another partner like that. And I'm almost like, I'm pretending like Jack's talking to me too. That looked like it felt good.
Yeah, no, I sincerely appreciate it. And Jack knows it's very mutually felt. We were having these conversations, hour-plus conversations already. And so we're like, why don't we just share these with other people? Because I feel Jack and I like throwing ideas back and forth. And if we can bring a really impressive third party into the conversation too and share it, it's a great little resource.
Right.
Well, Jack, where I commend you and Griffin, there's obviously I see the synergy between you guys, but you figured out a way to, well, what appears to figure out a way to really kind of create an alternative to this whole thing. We're seeing realtors get duly licensed. It feels like everybody's racing to the most amount of money. And I'm saying, and let me actually pause there. Is Hawaii seeing that? Are y'all seeing agents get their MLO license and try to get paid?
I think with the market shift, yeah. I mean, like that, it's interesting. I get that a lot, right? I get, oh, you're a loan officer. Okay. Cause your wife's just successful. And it's for us, that wasn't the case, right? Like Griffin mentioned, we were passionate about real estate before we even got to Hawaii. And real estate was just something I was super interested in learning about. But we were in Germany. I was like, okay, how can I actually action this? And we chose Hawaii based on just the BH number. Yeah, it was like here or LA or New York. It was like there was some ROTC positions I could have chosen that had the highest BH. And I was like, let's just choose Hawaii. Let's go buy a house. Let's put our BH towards what we want to do. And then let's get into this real estate thing. And the month we got on island, Courtney got a real estate license and it took off. And then very soon after that, I was like, hey, I love the numbers. I was like a numbers guy in the Army too. Once I transitioned from the combat arms side, I got into data analytics and it just suited me well, right? So it's something that we are passionate about. So it just led to success, I suppose. But to answer your question, I think that there's a lot of people, you have these conversations with agents and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm selling solar now and I'm doing this and I'm like, they're getting into all the different industries because it
All
is.
the ancillaries are out there.
Yeah. So, but for us, every single decision we've made to expand the business has been absolutely like, okay, it's been well thought out, right? Like, how is this actually supporting the client and how is it actually providing a better service as opposed to just seeking out more money? And it seems to work. And to that end, the property management thing, we just realized that the right call for a lot of our clients was to rent their house out. But
Sure.
how can we ethically present, and I keep going back to the ethics thing. It's really important to us, but like, how can I tell you you should sell your house because that's what makes me money? When in the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, they should rent this out. So we changed our business model, right? Like we provided some, like the option that we thought was correct. We wanted to also be that option for you, right? And that's kind of where the decision to start the property management was. It was about 24 months ago. So Courtney's she's gotten to just over 100. She's at 101 properties now in 2 years. And the brokerage in total has about 200. So it's been fun.
One, y'all need to solicit me because my property manager, shortly after she group texted me with you, Jack, to tell you that the property wasn't available anymore, she called me to say that she's moving to North Carolina. And so I was never, what is it?
It's the best state, man.
Is it? Yeah. Let's take your word for it. I know the podcast is running long, so I won't fact check anything that happens from here to the end. But yeah, so it was always her that I trusted. It was never really her organization. So anyways, I should probably connect with you on that. But two, I think there's a difference in opening an ancillary business to solve a problem versus from just a pure economic standpoint. Right. The motive changes everything. And so what we're thinking and what I was thinking is, you're talking about how short of a time ago you were just serving our country to now, man, you and your wife are just you're figuring out the exit strategy to consistently filling out a loan application, because it appears like, I don't know how long of a shelf life mortgage companies have. If you're not, right. It's hard to build a mortgage company and then sell it off. If you're the multiplier, you could take 12 months of profitability and 2.5 exit or whatever and say, oh, my business is worth 3 million. But if you're not there anymore and the loan officers go to the next brokerage, but you appear to have hedged yourself really well. Courtney doing the amount of real estate she's doing is really unheard of. Honestly, like I didn't believe you at first because I'd been hearing that there were inventory issues in Hawaii, but I'm like, I think Courtney found all the inventory.
She's probably the reason.
She's the reason. Like she's holding it, collecting like Pokemon cards. But how much of that business is actually veteran business?
Yeah. So her business partner and her, they were 50-50 business partners, and like together they just did every single deal together and split it. Now we've been separated from them for about 2 years now. So
is there a buyout there?
No, we started property management and she wanted the sales. To boil it down, there was a difference in ethical standards too. So we kind of separated and moved on. And I really resonated. Like, I feel like business partnerships don't always last. And I think that there was a rock in our shoe that we figured it wasn't going to last forever. But when we started pitching property management to clients, that really rubbed the other individual the wrong way. And just we couldn't see eye to eye on how to present the business to people. So we started our own path. So about 2 years ago. And again, we kind of haven't looked back, right? Like we've built the property management company. Courtney's continuing to crush sales. I mean, I talked to a real estate attorney the other day and he didn't know who we were or what we do or anything. And he just said, nobody does both well. And I beg to differ. I feel like with the right systems and the right support network, you can do both well. And frankly, in order to do either well, I think you have to provide both, at least on the sales side, because what you said, somebody who's buying, they're interested in the exit strategy too, right? That knowing what the exit strategy is a huge convincer to pull the trigger on the start side. And having that rental analysis is one of our biggest tools as to what we provide people right off the bat. And it's not based in, oh, I just Zillowed it and figured it out. Courtney knows. I joke that she's been in every single home on the island, right? We know what the place is going to rent out for. But
for a husband to say about his wife, by the way. A horrible joke for a husband to say about his wife.
Right. They're vacant. She said, been in every vacant house.
Okay.
Right. No, but Chris, we just love it, man. I feel
it's obvious.
It's a lot of hard work, but it's natural to us. We just went on a date last night, but it was our first date night in a couple of weeks. We kind of got bogged down. That's 3 weeks. And all we talked about for 2.5 hours was business, man. She's my business partner. She's my best friend. I friggin' love her, but at the same time, we go and our downtime is talking about business strategy and figuring out what we're going to do, how we're going to support our employees, how we're going to.
That's not a date. That's a staff meeting. Y'all had a staff meeting.
You're both we wrote it off.
I had a catered staff meeting. There was food.
Hey, it was at Noe at the Four Seasons, so I can't complain.
You're gonna write it off?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we're super excited. It's been a fun ride. I just feel like we're just trying to do what we can. And one of the things that we came up last night was like, I think we can stand by every single transaction and every single sale we've done. Right. And I don't think now that doesn't mean that everybody's made money on every single property. That's outside of we don't have a crystal ball, but we know that we're guiding these people the right way and we're going to help them the way that we would help a friend or,
Sure.
So
that's good.
So
I think, and Griffin, I'm so sorry because I know that you're like creating the structure of this podcast, and I feel like my business partner walked in as you had asked me a question in regards to like how to position and posture like a lot of that equity and stuff. I don't know if your listeners are going to get value. I feel like we're having small talk, but if this is how y'all's podcast format goes, I like this.
I have a question that popped in my head based on something you said that I would love, that I think would provide a lot of value to the listeners. And that's that random interaction with Tony, right? At the beginning, how did, like, you knew Chris, you knew your potential, but how did you communicate that potential to somebody who had maybe an opportunity to you to pursue being a loan officer?
Cody was probably the best result. If Tony and I had a baby, and he's right here, but before Cody proved what I'd been trying to preach, because to answer that question is kind of embarrassing, but I was showcasing it in all the wrong ways. Man, I was a lost individual. I talk about like my father, he didn't just pass away. Like he was sick for a while. I had a lot of regret not coming home right after the military. I had a lot of regret staying in Hawaii for another 7 to 8 years, and then moving to San Diego. I was making a lot of money and I was showing it in a very I don't know if you can say douchebag on this podcast, but that's how I would have called myself. And a lot of other douchebags were attracted to it and they wanted to also be a douchebag. And so I was recruiting by taking people to nightclubs, $30,000 bar tabs, bottle service, because Jack, our industry can be really lucrative and you can make a lot of money. Now, that didn't carry into the Monday through Friday. Like we got business done. I ran a tight ship. At the end of the day, I was pretty militant. We had a 10-minute morning huddle up. I needed to know where the files were at, what the status of them was. I think of all the deals I did in Hawaii, and I did a lot of them, I only blew one up, and I blew it by not getting the certificate of eligibility up front. Turned out to not qualify because he was a reservist that didn't meet the 6 years required. And I had to walk that back and explain to a buyer's agent, a listing agent, a title rep, an insurance person, all the reasons why they were losing their commission on a deal that I blew. And so from there, I just cared. I cared a lot. But I was pulling people in by portraying a lifestyle that I knew attracted the average 23, 24-year-old, 25-year-old, especially like an Army guy getting out of the Army who made $70,000 a year. He or she would be very attracted to that kind of lifestyle. And it took a switch for me. I think it really was when I lost my father. Somebody asked me a question in a conference where there was about 150 agents in attendance. I got asked to be on a panel. They said, on your journey to success, what was probably one of the biggest things that you gave up in exchange for your journey? And I said, knowing my father was sick and doing nothing about it. I didn't go home. I didn't spend the last few months with him. I didn't share a Vietnam story that he had, and because I was doing loan applications. And dude, you know how you're like on a stage and you feel like you're about to cry and you're trying to eat it. You're like, don't you dare cry here in San Diego in front of these agents. I lost it, man, like a baby. And you could hear a pin drop. And I realized in that moment, I was creating a lot of monsters. I was making loan officers a lot of money through sales tactics, through scripts, through whatever our systems were back then. But I was also seeing them fight with their wife. I was also seeing their kids show up to the office at 8 o'clock at night with Chick-fil-A because dad hasn't come home yet. And so I realized the influence I had, but the influence I had was influencing the wrong way. And so I immediately shifted my messaging to say, hey, I can help you make a lot of money in this industry. But if you show up to our annual appreciation party without your wife, what's it all for? Go home, be where you're supposed to be. Make sure that there's a reason why you're doing this, and don't let it just be for the bottle service. Don't let it just be for the. And I mean, dude, without coming off too philosophical, I mean, we still have our loan officers that just want to make a lot of money and buy a Lamborghini in their first year, and you got to let them. But my whole thing is saying, don't let your regrets catch up to you in the sense of we're exchanging, and this industry doesn't turn off at 5 o'clock. And you know this, Jack, like you could probably go on vacation for a week, but you're not really on vacation. Your emails are still happening, and you could put your away message on, but you're still reading the email. And so the advice that I give now is to just really catch as much rain as you can right now. Take the income that you're making, siphon it, move it to a platform that brings you peace, invest in real estate. This won't be forever. I think the way our market's moving, I think that there's an expiration date on realtors. I think there's an expiration date on loan officers. Automation is going to speed a lot of things up. We were having this conversation with a friend the other day. There's a lot of big box lenders out there right now that have a lot of capital, but they do service horribly because you go to read their reviews and it's horrible. It's like, I should have never used Veterans United or whoever the big box company is. Well, when automation starts automating that, and that bad person is no longer responsible for getting the VOR or the VOE, and I know some of that automation already exists, but now you got a company with a lot of capital using automation, they're going to take over. And I think that people have to start thinking about their exit strategies like today, and not to get out today, but to say, hey, this may not be forever. And so that's how I'm trying to recruit now. I'm trying to recruit more from like a lifestyle sense to say, hey, you want to come work here, make a lot of money, we can do it. But let me just have a 15-minute meeting with you on what to do with that money, how things are going. I check in on my people. Cody and I get a lot of compliments on our culture and how it is. But Jack, if you go and ask somebody else who worked with us 5 years ago, that may not have been the same story. And you guys know this about leadership, like you're always evolving. And sometimes it just takes turning 42 to think like a 42-year-old. I wasn't thinking like this whenever I was 33, making $5 million in a year or whatever the case was. So recruiting with principles, influencing loan officers to join us, to say, hey, come work at a place where your family matters, where your kids' names matter, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. How many loan officers do you guys have at REV?
34.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. Cody's got a lot of influence in our city. And when I first came to San Antonio, I brought Veterans United and I told Cody, hey, come apply. He was a family friend and my father loved him. My older brother loved him. And I saw him catch wind right away. And I was thinking like, I think I'm lying to the loan officers here because I'm coming from a place like Hawaii and then San Diego where the loan amounts are higher and the credit was better. And so making six figures was easy, but I was like, I don't think anybody's going to make six figures in San Antonio. Not with $220,000 loan amounts and not whenever 2 out of 3 credit pulls are bad. Like Cody, he figured it out. And I remember when he had his first month at like 30 units in a month. And I remember having a conversation with him like, hey, dude, you're in uncharted waters right now. I've never done that many units. I want you to know that like, I'm now more of a safety net than anything. I don't think I can lead you. I think you're leading yourself now, but Please let me be the first phone call when you blow one of those deals up, or when a realtor calls you pissed off, wanting to bury you. Just pull me in, because those things happen when you're operating at such a high capacity and you're just basically trying to figure out where the guardrails need to go at that point, because it's hard to say no to more volume or more units, especially when you're young and you're making a good amount of money.
Sure.
So Cody pushed us. He made us have to figure things out faster. And I think having loan officers that are exploring that, I've lost some good loan officers that had a higher EQ than I did. And whether you read John Maxwell or not, 21 Irrefutable Laws, chapter 1 is the law of the lid. And if you're an 8 in your leadership, but you got a 9 working underneath you, eventually you're going to have that conflict. And when some of these loan officers were asking good questions that I didn't have the answer for, guess what? They're gone. They're looking for a CEO that can answer that question, a CEO that is thinking about AI, a CEO that is thinking about ops. And so having self-awareness on your leadership and your EQ level, you gotta have people pushing you.
Right. No, but that alone, that last sentence too, is really important because it's about growth, right? You have to be able to grow. You have to be able to take on new things and kind of morph and change, because you're not who you were when you were a young loan officer just starting out. You are growing. Just because you are the CEO doesn't mean that you have every answer. It's about, hey, what you can trust is that I'm going to be able to think through a process and find the right answer after some analysis. Some answers aren't just off the cuff. Let me answer yes, no, and then we move on. Some do take some time, but I think the growth there is super important. And Griffin, I'm huge on growth, so I'm sure Griffin's kind of smiling there. But
well, Jack, I'll tell you, you probably have experienced this already in your short time, but sometimes you make more money just in the position that you're currently in. If you're doing it for financial reasons, I would tell a lot of people, I think a lot of people correlate growth to more income. And it almost has this like switch that happens where, hey, I've made enough money. And so now it's going to be all about the people. Because I got loan officers that do laps around Cody and I. We got loan officers that are just absolutely crushing it. And Cody and I are looking at our P&L like, oh man, we're going to be able to pay mortgage this month. But you always go back to the bootstrapping days. Like, man, I miss just having a couple of assistants pulling in those 10 applications a month. Like, why did we decide to go hire 363 people? Oh yeah, that's right. Because we want to change the way veterans are served. But did you really? Is it worth like the sleep that you've lost and the 25 pounds that you've put on and your high blood pressure, 160 consistently, and your wife thinks you're a complete a-hole? Do you really want to change the way veterans are served? And you're like, well, not so much anymore. I want to change the way they're served, but at a more convenient and comfortable level, right? I kind of want to change the way they're being served right now. And you just got to find that balance, man, because there's always going to be shots fired at some capacity. Your why is always going to be tested, right? How much does that mission statement actually mean to you? Are you really willing to lose a little bit of sleep over it? Are you really willing to work amongst people who are doing laps around you financially without you getting in a crazy space in your head to be like, man, these people aren't grateful. If they only knew what I was doing for them. You got to answer all that. And it's tough, dude. Leadership gets really lonely really quickly, as y'all know. And yeah, it has to be about that mission.
Right. How do you balance that? Like, how do you balance the mission and hiring? Like, I'm sure you guys are hiring and letting people go almost every single month, I would assume, right? So how do you balance bringing people on that understand your mission? Like, of course, they might say they believe in it, but do they understand it? And versus, hey, some guy his goal is that Lamborghini and he's going to outwork everybody regardless of what he thinks about the mission.
Yeah, Jack. I think a lot of your crew just wants to know whether or not you're like full of shit. I think, and y'all probably did this in the military where like you're always sizing up your leader to be like, is this guy a hypocrite? I remember the military used to bring in these financial counselors and they would just wear these baggy ass Hawaiian shirts and khaki pants that looked like they were from like Men's Warehouse. And I was like, what is this dude about to tell me about making more income? Is that how it was for y'all? Like no financial advisor ever looked like they were actually making money.
Right.
And so they start talking and you really kind of learn around like slide 2 or 3. You're like, yeah, this person's full of shit. And then you watch through the blinds to see what car they leave the parking lot in. And we're all like trying to model what we view as successful in the sense that like the good ones will stay, but that's only contingent upon the leaders actually emulating what they want to see their people emulate. And so to build a culture like that is tough because some of your best loan officers are not always your top performers on paper. Some of them are in the hallway praying with somebody because they're having a bad day. Some of them are having a conversation that you don't even know about, protecting your integrity and your honor. And so it's really kind of establishing what's important. And if you're just one of those leaders that always has sales meetings that has a volume on the overhead, I think you're kind of missing it because you're always getting your people hyped up on dopamine, chasing that position versus, hey, can I count on this person to actually go and do some damage in areas that have nothing to do with volume? So the term is obviously putting the right carrot in front of the horse and top grading that way. So we actually have a pretty good retention, and that's probably a bad thing too. We don't fire as fast as we probably should. We let a lot of people, we kind of hope people will just leave when they're not good at their jobs. I mean, especially during the COVID season, you're just, hey, you got a pulse. We were promoting receptionists to office managers. Office managers were becoming like branch managers. We were squeezing the toothpaste from the bottom. Everybody was getting promoted. So, but yeah, I think that what we had to learn was it's not a matter of how to hire a good employee. It was how to fire 9 bad employees, because for every 10, you might find 1 or 2 good ones. But then what do we do with the other 8? You need KPIs, you need PIPs, you need accountability meetings, you need partnership. And I mean, it's just stuff you don't think about, right? You do think about it, but if you're an entrepreneur, you're thinking about, man, I just need to pay the bills. I need to make some money this month. Not, hey, how is Sarah doing on her PIP? This is the second one. I would ask you, Jack, like, how do you handle that? Like, how do you handle growth? I saw you look at Griffin. I'm assuming y'all have a different mindset on growth. Y'all view it differently. Is that fair?
Well, when I was a commander, I was commenting on our professional relationship back then because I was a broken record about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. All that meant was holding yourself accountable, right? And admitting your flaws first, and then being able to move past them once you've kind of figured it out, right? So I think the best way to grow, if you ignore your flaws, then you're not going to grow, right? And then the last step is actually moving beyond that, right? Actually saying, okay, I can actually leave that in my past after I've done the work to actually get better. So I think, have a unique, I suppose, priority on growth mindset. That is how I hire. I ask a lot of questions about how people view the world through a growth mindset lens, because if it's hard to teach, and I'm willing to teach that to people that I hire, but if you are unwilling to be honest with yourself about issues, I've learned my leadership doesn't mesh well with you, right? And it's been something that I've learned from the military and through the business side. If somebody has a growth mindset, they're going to view me as a much better leader than if they don't have a growth mindset, and that will really enable my leadership to set them up for success. Whereas if I hire somebody who doesn't like criticism, I'm always respectful, of course, right? Like the criticism comes through a respectful lens and it's to get better. But I'll tell you, Griffin probably sees me as a better leader because he's capable and because he holds himself accountable. So when we talked about things, it was, hey, let's get better and let's move on. Whereas somebody who might not have a growth mindset probably doesn't see me as the best leader because I'm focused on getting better and constantly getting better. I'm kind of unwavering in I like to say I'm happy, but I'm very rarely content,
Griffin probably also has a different proximity to you than most do. And I don't know if you guys are biblical men or read your Bible. Simon Peter said something to Jesus once in the Bible, and Jesus responded with, "Get thee behind me, Satan," which is really offensive, right? When your homie Jesus calls you Satan. But we talk about that sometimes. And I think the reason he can get away with it is because of the proximity. Simon Peter was like one of Jesus's boys. Like, he had his 12 disciples, but he had really 3 major homies, in which Simon Peter was one. Mm-hmm. And Cody, I can deliver confrontation differently because of proximity. And for that reason, it's looked at as empowerment versus somebody who doesn't have a lot of proximity to you. When you give them that harsh criticism, they'll view it as stress. Bro, you give me 10 minutes a week and you're telling me I'm not performing, like you don't even know my name. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. You could just definitely do this job better, right?
That is so spot on. And that's one of the main, like probably the top 3 takeaways I took away from being a commander in the military was the people who were closest to me, who I saw every day, got the criticism, but they also saw how much praise I was giving. Whereas people who I saw once a week, I might walk by them and say, hey, get your gloves on. And I cared about them, but that might be my only interaction with them that week. And now I'm just the asshole who told him to get his gloves back on. versus the proximity does really well
Yeah.
for my
It's-
leadership.
Well, it
It's
goes
the
two ways,
relationship.
right? Like the leader has to be humble enough to receive that back from those that know him best. And
Mm,
so Jack
that's
could
good.
receive criticism or constructive feedback from me or from others that know him really well because we actually know Jack's heart and intention behind things. And we can speak more accurately to what he's maybe where he misstepped or where he could improve on.
That's good. I've seen leadership in both aspects in that case. So you have leaders who are just naturally good at being present. I'm not one of those. I'm futuristic mindset. I'm always thinking about the next thing. But the closer the proximity, the higher the accountability. That's a good combination for empowerment. If I walk close with Griffin and I'm nudging Griffin along the way, he's going to feel empowered. But if I walk close with Griffin and I don't hold him accountable, you start to breed entitlement. And that was the other aspect to a lot of things where we call it coward leadership, where you have leaders really close to you, but you're not saying anything when you see them doing something wrong. You have to now know that you're just creating an entitled bunch. And it's hard because for me, I live kind of on the other spectrum, which is I'm not close with a lot of people. So I'm stressing people out. When I give them feedback and I realize, man, I haven't spent enough time with this person, they're going to be stressed in this. Or I don't spend a lot of time with them and I don't say anything to them ever. They're just dead to me. And so I'm always kind of all over this grid on how much time have I spent with this person before I go correct this person. And yeah, I mean, from there, I think the crew will understand like my transparency in that. And I can kind of coach better in that, knowing that, hey, before I actually give them advice, the next meeting cannot be the advice. It needs to be the relationship. I just need to go to lunch with this person and have them remind me what their kids' names are.
No,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's super profound. And that's something I wish I would have done. I looked at it as like if I don't correct this person, then they're gonna judge me on my consistency, and they're gonna not think like I'm somehow in it. It was an error, right? We all again we're all learning. But
Patrick Lee and Sony, are you a fan of his work? Or do you read any books?
no, I
I,
haven't heard of it.
I'm a fan.
Griffin, you are? Yeah, he talks a lot about accountability. He's a pretty good author. But where do you stand on this? And I'm sorry, I know we're running long, but praising in public, but correcting in private. How do you respond to that? What do you think?
I pretty much follow that, but I also in like meetings, let's say somebody shows up 5 minutes late to a meeting, I will address it, right? And what the reason why I address it is also to make sure that the standard doesn't slip to where everybody thinks that they can show up late to a meeting. Now, do I berate that person for being late? No, of course not. I think what I like to do is I've kind of created a culture of if you have a mistake, the whole goal is for them to identify the mistake first and then come up with, hey, here's what I'm going to learn from it. Now, that's not perfect, right? That doesn't happen every time. But we did have somebody show up late to a meeting just 2 days ago on Tuesday. And it was literally like everything I've been working towards, and it just happened. And I was like, oh, this is great. Because they walked in the meeting and they addressed the group and said, hey, sorry I'm late. I had a client call. And we like obviously clients come first. I didn't mean to whatever. So the fact is they were late, but if they hadn't said anything, then everybody wouldn't have known. Like, they had a legitimate reason. We always say client calls come first, right? Like always prioritize that, of course. But because they addressed it right away, I didn't have to say anything about it, which was, I brought that up with the group. That's so enabling for a leader to have a subordinate who's holding themselves accountable, right? Because that enables the leader to be more supportive instead of providing critiques, right? When your subordinate is holding themselves accountable, that's every leader's dream, because then you can just be like, dude, let me figure out how to help you, because I know you're going to hold yourself accountable. I don't have to come down on you. Let me just enable the hell out of you because I know you're going to hold yourself accountable. But that's not every single person has those traits, right? You got to kind of sift through and try to hire the right people, I guess.
So good, man. That's well, it sounds like you definitely have read Patrick Lee and Sony, because that sounds like a textbook answer, man. I didn't know that right away. That was hard for me. I would be the guy that would let somebody know offline, hey, dude, I just need you on time going forward. And I thought I was doing a solid, and not knowing that I was pissing off everybody else because they were like, Cano never gets mad at that person. I'm like, no, I do. You just don't see it. I'm not going to spank it in front of y'all. And in a way that the people want blood, man. Like, dude, I just want to know that the standard you're setting is across the board. But yeah, it's a fine line. Our industries, it's tough, dude. It's so tough. We're talking to people who are in sales. We're talking to people who are trying to provide. We're talking to people who have kids, who are on a call with a client. And what you don't know is, again, I go back to your people are watching you. They're watching to see, how is Chris going to respond to this? How is he going to tolerate it? I've gotten it wrong, man. I've had people who've shared with me, hey, it looks like you got favorites. And deep down, I'm like, I do. I definitely have favorites. Tell me a leader who doesn't. My mom has favorites. Yeah, but it's starting to show now I got a problem. But yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
funny.
Chris, there's a two-part question that we ask every guest
Yeah.
on the podcast, and it's one ask and one give. So to start with the first, what's one way somebody listening to this could help you or provide value to your company?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I'm going to answer this with like my ownership hat on first. It's to help ideate in a way. Like right now, I'm in a season where I'm attracted to idealists and executors in the sense that we're heading towards a world of automation. For 14 years, I've been doing a seminar in front of people. I feel like Blockbuster while the whole world is going Netflix. And I'm like, there's got to be an easier way I can get this message out to veterans across the states, make it really simple for them to kind of hear some of the context we're talking about today and move forward and take their next action steps. And so I have a team that's actually upstairs right now with an ad guy, an automator, an engineer, and we're building out an online seminar that actually will hopefully get into more military members' hands without them having to show up to San Antonio, Texas to hear me speak. So the best way I could come across anybody right now is to say, hey, I see what you guys are doing. Here's a nugget. Here's value. Anybody that can speak to platforms that allow us to get in front of more military members from a media stance would be really beneficial for our company right now. And just anybody that has any sort of success in the world of online sales, if you will. I hate to label it that, but just to bring clarity to it, that's what it is. Us trying to help service members through a video camera and a click now button.
And I have to assume if they're trying to buy a house, particularly using the VA home loan, probably in all 50 states, I would assume, then you guys are a good option.
Yeah, to give us a crack at it. I think if a military member has the lights turned on, they'll make good decisions, and we're a pretty viable option. What we do is we remove all VA lender fees, and a lot of lenders do that now. It's nothing special. Our pricing is priced really well. We broker as well. If we need to, we'll get pricing, and we're pretty competitive. So understanding, okay, interest rates are here. You guys don't charge any VA lender fees. How do I shop you guys? And I always tell them, go get an interest rate, go get a loan estimate, and compare it to what we're providing for you. The service is where it's a zero tolerance for me. If we pre-approve you and we say we're going to get the loan done, then the only thing that should go wrong, if anything does go wrong, will be the property. But as one of the owners of the company, I can make things work, even if it keeps, especially if it keeps egg off of one of my guys' faces. Right. I'll give a quick example on that. I had a Marine come to us and he was working with another lender and they were in transition. So they'd already sold their house with expectations to close on the new house, and they were staying in a hotel. So I get a call from a frantic real estate agent saying, Chris, I need your help. The family is not going to be able to close. And I said, which one of my loan officers is it? And they're like, well, it's not your company. It's another lender. And I said, well, why did you allow them to go into contract if they weren't fully approved? And she said, well, they said that if they did X, Y, and Z on their credit, they would do a repool and they would qualify. And I was like, well, they gambled, because when they did the repool, the actual credit score went down even a little bit more. So they were at like a 517 FICO. I take a look at their credit and I see that there was a time a year earlier that the wife had got behind on some payments. And I asked the wife, I said, what happened in this season? She said, my husband got 100% disability. He got cancer while serving in the Corps. And so I had to take him to the VA for his chemo. And during the chemo process, it did so much damage to his bones that he had to go through a 6-month hyperbaric chamber process to restore the brittleness of his bones. And so I was out of work, needless to say, Chris, and getting out of work, we got a little bit behind on our bills. And so when you look at a veteran who gave practically his life, 100% disabled, cancer, just really not on the good end of it, now we're a lender that's going to say no to them because the wife did what any wife would do in that scenario and quit her job, make sure her husband was getting the treatment that he needed through the VA and then through the hyperbaric process. You're going to tell him no without actually understanding why the credit score reads a 517. We are the company that will not just see the 517. We're going to go back a year and figure out where that 517 stemmed from. And we're going to ask questions that usually lead to me calling the VA to verify that they will have no problem guaranteeing this loan, which makes my underwriter feel warm and fuzzy about approving the loan, knowing that the VA will guarantee it and sending it down the pipeline. So That's who we are. And so whether if you're a veteran with an 800 credit score, shop around, you're probably going to get a ton of great deals. If you're a veteran that's been told no, which is a lot of veterans out in our country, it's your responsibility to know why you were told no. Was it the VA guidelines that told you no, or was it a lender's overlays that told you no? And more often than not, it's the lender overlays. So we underwrite true to the VA guidelines. So should a lender have told you no in the past, man, give us a shot to explain to you why they told you no.
Right.
That's a powerful story, man.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, that's incredible. What, and then second part of that is one, whether it's advice, recommendation, et cetera, that could help somebody listening to this.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to remind military members of is we got to get out of the mindset that it's about us. I don't think so. I think the VA loan was created for your children. I think it was created for your grandchildren. I think it was established through the Montgomery GI Bill back in 1944 with the mindset to protect your family, not just your immediate family, but your family to come. Because real estate is one of the only things that it actually allows us the opportunity to transfer generational wealth. And so to have the idea to die with your certificate in your back pocket is crazy to me. The idea of the first time you owning real estate is when you're buried in it is crazy to me. I think that as a military member, you have to understand that one day your 5-year-old will be 35, and one day your wife will be handed a triangular American flag with a 21 gun salute. And you have to really ask yourself, what are you leaving behind? And it's not a Wells Fargo commercial. It's not a USAA commercial with somebody running up to dad in an army suit. It's a real circumstance that you're going to have to address one day. Your life will be called home. And what you leave behind, it's right in front of you. It's a 30-minute pre-approval appointment waiting to happen. And again, not every pre-approval ends with a happy story. Some ends with a to-do list and things that need to get worked on. But it is a conversation that is warranted. And if you think it's just about you, I think that's where you're missing the mark. It's also about your children. It's also about your sweetheart. It's also about your grandkids to come, your great-grandchildren to come. So for me, I take it really personal. I try to remind people of that all the time. I encourage veterans to open a bank account and call it, like if your son's name is Timothy, call it Timothy Investments, and start thinking with the mindset that I'm investing into the next generation here. Because if it's just called checking or savings in your Navy Federal account, you're not as motivated. But give your bank accounts a name it after your children, put away a little bit every month, profit first. We all know the model and the method, but stop thinking that investing is only about you. It's meant to outlive you. And that's what real estate affords us. The VA home loan benefit allows us to do this thing with zero capital. The average millionaire has 7 sources of income. While most people are running the race, having to save up 20%, you've been given this certificate that allows you to start like right now. So overcoming that fear and have a 30-minute phone call with a guy like Jack, a guy like myself, I think we can change your perspective on some of these things.
I appreciate that. I think that was one of the reasons I was excited to have you on, is just because you've got the experience, and with the military background and everything, it just seems, you figured things out, and that's just sage wisdom from right at the end there. It's just, hey, but it's not groundbreaking. It's just, hey, just take a look at what's actual reality in your life. Like, what's important. Let's actually just kind of peel back the onion and figure out what's important. And that's such a great point, Chris. So I appreciate that.
I have a Primerica, as I think actually how it's pronounced. I have the life insurance policy behind me on the wall here. And it's a letter that I received when my father passed away from his life insurance. And it says it doesn't call my dad by his name. It says case number, blah, 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 a check in the amount of XYZ. This case is closed. And it's so cold and it's so like irking. And I remember when I got that check, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm just going to deposit this. I don't even want it. It was just a weird reminder. But I was like, man, there's no way this is what my father's life amounted to. There was so much more. And my father was never a guy. He was never like a real estate mogul. He was a man of ethics and morality and wanted to serve our country well in Vietnam, and suffered from Agent Orange and was your typical run-of-the-mill veteran that got stuck in the VA process. And then you get this paper at the end of it all, and it's just, but it's a harsh reality that we all face. At the end of the day, something will be transferred to the next generation. And you don't have to hand them this massive real estate portfolio, but what you owe them is your best. And I think a lot of us are just, I don't know which one of you said it, but I think that there's a way to word things. Like when I ask people, is it hard to buy a house? And they say, yeah, kind of. And I say, no, it's just easier not to. And when you understand the difference of hard versus easier not to, you start to realize you're kind of being a bitch. You catch yourself finding the easy way out of a lot of things. Is it hard to wake up at 5 a.m, work out? No, it's just easier not to. Hard is getting on your knees and praying cancer out of your parents' body. Hard is like having to tell your children that mommy's not going to be around much longer. There's some real hard shit in life. Getting pre-approved isn't hard. It's just easier not to. And so you need a motivator. That's all I try to do for people is I just try to be that motivator, because you guys are absolutely right. We didn't say anything groundbreaking in this podcast. It's all out there. It's all on the VA pamphlet 26 Tax 7. It's all on a USAA commercial. It's out there. You buy a house at zero down and then you hope to rent it out and recoup your mortgage. How many more creative ways can we say it? It's not just that. They need a motivator to say, hey, the harsh reality is one day you will die and what you leave behind is important. We think the VA home loan benefit can play a role in that and you should explore it. So.
Yeah, what a powerful framing there, Chris. Hard versus easier not to. And coming from someone who personally, our family was able to build the foundation of our financial well-being off of starting in real estate using a VA home loan. I mean, it's very personal to us, and thank you for what you do, trying to get it personal for other people to actually make a difference in their life too. So thanks for taking the time on this show, and this has been a pleasure, man.
Been a pleasure for me. Thank you guys. I hope y'all want to do this again next week.
I would love to. Yeah, maybe not recorded. Wait, let's open it up a little bit. Let's not record it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.